Hello, everybody. My name is Melanie Richmond, and I am the founder and CEO at True North Wellbeing Coaching, where we help driven professionals get to the next level in their career and life by optimizing their well-being. And today we have a very special guest, our first guest on our live show, Maryann Lombardi. So welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited. I'm your first guest. I did not know that. This is really exciting.
Yeah. And Maryann, you are an entrepreneur, coach, exec coach that helps change makers, which a lot of driven professionals are, get clear and simplify so that they can take those bold action steps to build the business that they want and love without all the noise. So we're so excited to have you today.
I appreciate it. It's good to be here. I love to do whatever I can to help folks get to that next level.
Awesome. And I see somebody in the chat saying good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So thanks for tuning in. So we'll start off with maybe if you could tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are in a few sentences here.
Yeah, sure. So, like you said, I'm an executive and entrepreneur coach, and I am also a single parent of a pretty cool teenager, who actually likes me still. So that's great. I'm an almost empty nester. So navigating that whole change, I can imagine there are some folks out there that are going through that process as well. I've been working with entrepreneurs and executives pretty much for the past 20 years in a variety of capacities, and helping cities, institutions, individuals really figure out how to find the policies, programs, and resources that they need to, get to the next level.
That's awesome. It's funny because before this live show, I'm working from home today, and I was putting some of the toys away and just clearing out the space. So I'm in a different stage of life. So it's nice to talk to somebody that's at the ladder. So today we're talking about confidence. And one thing that sometimes people believe is that they think they need to believe more in themselves in order to build that confidence. And I wanted you to speak on your views on that and what you think really builds confidence.
Yeah, sure. So the common conception, it seems, is that we talk a lot about, especially when we're talking about women, right? That the access to confidence is just belief in oneself. And if we can believe in ourselves, then that will solve the problem of confidence. We will become more confident. But the problem is that it ends up setting women up to be at fault for their lack of confidence, right? And the reality is that if we don't take into consideration that, the systems and structures that we all exist in, we're not set up for women to be doing the things that we are doing today. And so that there is a gendered lens on this idea of confidence that is really super important, right? And so it makes perfect sense that women doubt themselves sometimes. And it's perfect sense that when you have a self-limiting belief, like that is normal. Those feelings are absolutely normal. And when we tell women that if they just believe in themselves, that it will solve all their problems, what happens is that when they feel that self-doubt turns in feeling bad about themselves and making themselves at fault for that lack of confidence. And they're not at fault for their lack of confidence. They're not at fault for their self-doubt or their self-limiting beliefs. We all have them. They are honest feelings that we should have, right? That teach us something, that tell us something about who we are. So really, the access to confidence is about how we take action, right? Because when we take action and we see a result that is a positive result, then we feel a certain way about that. And that leads us then to take another action. And then we take that action and we feel a different way. And so we take another action. And what happens by taking action and succeeding at the thing we're doing, because we're taking action, we start to believe in ourselves. But the belief in ourselves happens at the end of the process. It doesn't happen at the beginning. The action is what leads. And actually before that, it's knowing who you are, what you want, and why, right? Like doing all that kind of work, which helps you decide what the actions to take are. But it's the action that leads to the confidence. It isn't the belief.
Yeah, and I love what you said there, like how to take action, because it's easy, or sometimes it can be like you want to take action right away, but also taking the time to think about why is it that you're doing this, and how do you want to go about it? So bringing clarity there. And yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think that goes for both males and females in industry, that with repetition, getting positive results, naturally confidence is going to build.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Absolutely. When we get those positive results, we do feel better about what we're doing, but it doesn't necessarily limit the self-doubt, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
we have to allow ourselves to have self-doubt and to have confidence exist in the same space, that because they aren't polar opposites of each other, right? Like, allow your self-doubt to walk in the room, acknowledge its existence because it's there. You can't ignore it, and say, okay, hey, I see you. Thank you for showing up, but right now I'm going to still move through. So moving through your self-doubt is much more important than eliminating it. It's the same thing with those limiting beliefs. Acknowledge that they're there, figure out why, but still move through it, right? Like, still take the action. That's what it's about. It isn't a zero-sum game, right? Like, it is about sitting in the space where both of those things are possible.
Yeah, and I love that you talk about that, because we all have an inner critic, something that, that inner voice that says, "Oh, you can't do this. You're not good enough for that." And it's realizing, like, where's that coming from? And then, like you said, like acknowledging its presence, and then maybe flipping the script around into something that will move you forward in the direction that you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing that I get a lot, and I actually had it in our private Facebook group, is people struggle with confidence, especially when there's a major change in their life or in their work, or there's a major disturbance in life, like a pandemic. So how do you maintain your confidence, or how do you continue building it throughout those times?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that our confidence can ebb and flow, right? And I think that's completely normal. It isn't a fixed point on a line where we are suddenly, reach the level of being confident, and now we just stay there, right? And change in and of itself has a destabilizing effect, right? It's something that upends everything, right? Like, it can be emotional changes, it can be physical changes, it can be life changes, right? It can be job changes, it can be world changes like the pandemic, and when change happens, it's useful to take a step back and think about, how does this impact my day to day? How does this impact the family, the people I care about? How does this impact my world? Right? And take that step before being reactionary about how we're supposed to respond to it. And I think that the pandemic is a great, was a great opportunity for people to do that, right? Like, to sit for a second and think and rethink what they're doing, right? And change is the kind of thing that can happen to you, but it can also be the kind of thing that you initiate in many ways. But the confidence, I think, it functions in the same way. It's just, you need to allow yourself time to navigate that change. And a lot of times people can be a little reactionary and fearful of change. And so they immediately want to keep doing what they're doing. But the reality is that the more flexible we can be with that change, the more agile, the easier it is to navigate it. It's the same old thing about the tree and the wind that bends, right? Like, when we're too anchored and too sturdy and too rigid, often it's much easier for us to break. But when there's some movement, some fluidity, some agility, we have the ability to navigate change, readjust what our actions are, readjust what our needs and our wants are, and then take those next actions, see those results, start to feel confident in that change, and then start to believe that what you're doing is right and believing in yourself, and start the cycle over again.
Yeah, I love that. It's I always think of it like when I'm downhill skiing, like you have to go with the slope. You can't put any resistance towards it, and be agile with anything that comes up, any bumps or turns or curves. So you do have to look ahead. You can't be looking down at your feet while it's all happening.
Absolutely true.
And we had a comment in the chat come in. She's mentioned that I had a manager in the past who told me, "You will never be a manager," and the manager was a she. So that's an unpleasant comment. Doesn't sound like the greatest leadership quality there. And I remember when I was doing engineering school, I failed my first midterm, and I remember talking to the professor at the time, and he's like, "Well, engineering's not for everybody. Maybe it's not for you." I was like, you know what? I'm going to show him that I can be the best engineer out there. So I went and finished the rest of my degree. So I think it's really like, know where that comment is coming from that person, and there's something going on with them that they haven't worked through, and you get to decide what you do with that comment. So I'm curious to know if you have anything else to add in the chat there.
Well, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. One of the things I would also add is that sometimes people are just jerks.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes people are just, mean and nasty and are not constructive with their comments. And so therefore, we have to take that with a grain of salt. But to your point, though, that often when you're receiving feedback, people are responding to you based on their own needs and their own stuff more than they're responding to you based on your stuff. So being able to take a second when you receive feedback to go, one, is this about me or is this about them? Two, how much does their opinion actually matter to me? Right. And if their opinion matters to me, then maybe I will think about this a little bit deeper. And if what they're saying is about me and not about them, then I will absolutely give this 5 minutes. But one, if this is about them, no, thank you. If this is somebody's opinion that doesn't matter to me, no, thank you. Move on. Right. Just because somebody gives you their opinion doesn't mean that opinion is important to you or has any value to you.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess whenever we're coming towards the end here, so one of our last question is, so with showing confidence, and I've always been a red type personality, like I speak what's on my mind. I've always been competitive growing up. I played a lot of sports. So how do you come across confidence without appearing arrogant or, less liked?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, one, I would add that not everybody's going to like you, right? And so pleasing people doesn't necessarily need to be the entire goal, right? Sometimes one, you're not always going to be liked. Two, that is absolutely okay because not everybody is for everybody, right? And this desire, and I do think this is moderately gendered, this idea to be a people pleaser, right, can often get in the way of us actually stating our opinion. And just because we're stating our opinion or just because we're saying something that might be, either controversial or something that is uncomfortable for folks doesn't mean we're being arrogant. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us just because somebody else may be uncomfortable by what we're saying. So I think one thing is, again, reading the room and figuring out that. It's figuring out is the behavior other people are having towards me about me or about them. Am I okay with what I said? And do I believe what I said? Then, okay, stand strong in that, right? Just because you've said something uncomfortable doesn't make you arrogant. Just because you've stood up for yourself and acknowledged who you are and what you do and what you stand for, again, does not make you arrogant. So I think that is less about confidence, like showing confidence or something, that it is about understanding who you are and being okay if it makes other people uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because having those difficult conversations, standing for what you believe in, and changing what the norm is in society does take confidence. And one way I look at it is you have to be assertive with what you say, not arrogant. And I think that's really powerful in itself. It's being assertive in that core belief and in what your message is. And it's not trying to make yourself better than anyone else. It's what you believe in, and they get to take it or leave it. Right?
Yeah. Well, and learning to use your voice in that way is very powerful, right? Like not only knowing who you are and what you want and what you have to say, but then the extension of taking the action to use your voice is not as easy always as it sounds, right? Like it sounds like, oh, just say what you have, but it's not necessarily that easy, right? But taking the action to speak your mind and use your voice to tell your story is very powerful, and it's very necessary. It's very necessary to have those uncomfortable conversations and to put who you are truthfully out in front of the world, because that, to your point, that's how we make a better world, right? That's how we make a world that is inclusive of everybody. That's how we do that, is by hearing those stories, by seeing those people, by caring about their journeys.
And I refer to it as speaking your truth is kind of the language I use around there. And it really comes down to your heart. So, what your values are, what you really truly believe in, and speaking that out into the world. So thanks for that. So the last one we're going to do is just to tie it all together. So confidence, I would view it as more the result or the outcome, by all of these things that we talked about, like how you take action. And you kind of alluded to it at the start, which I see it tying into our well being, because how we take care of ourselves, how we do that self reflection, how we really do that inner work and taking care of ourselves, our community, things that matter to us will lead us to live a well lived life. So then we can actually have the gas in the tank to take the actions, see the positive results, and then build that confidence. So, do you have anything to add there, Maryann?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think you're absolutely right, right? Like you are your most important asset, right? Whether it's business wise or personal wise. And so to take care of that asset, you have to do certain things. You have to care about your mental and your physical health. You have to care about, the time that you take to do things. You have to care about yourself in a variety of ways and take the time to protect that, and as confidence is about the ability to take action, it's very hard to take actions. It's very hard to be clear about who you are and what you want if your person is not okay, right? Like if you are not okay, it's very hard to take those steps. So to your point, well-being is the key to it all.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today as our first guest. I think that was a very insightful conversation. And I hope everybody has a good rest of their week. And we'll catch you next Wednesday at 12:05 MST. Take
Thank you
care.
so much. Bye.
Bye bye.